Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. We've now reached episode 5, which, of these early episodes, this is the closest it's going to come to a rant. It's not going to be a full-on rant, because I can't really think of any episodes off the top of my head that would go to that level. There might be a few as we go closer, but of these early episodes, this is the closest I come to that. And as I've mentioned a couple times in the previous episodes, it's mainly because this far into the first season, I'm going to cut them a little bit of slack since they're still trying to find into their footing when it comes to the characters, what they want the show to be, etc. So if it's an episode that doesn't ring as true as a whole compared to other episodes, especially since I saw a lot of the episodes out of order when I first saw it in syndication, I do go into some of these episodes that I first saw on DVD with the future events in mind and the future writing in mind. I do kind of have to cut it a little bit both ways. That said, today's episode is Look, Don't Touch, episode 5. And it's definitely a plot that only would have happened in the first couple seasons, as I've said a couple times already. And it's one that you could kind of relate to, but the way they go about it definitely leans heavy on the sitcom format. But with what goes on, it's something that those, especially in a relationship, can understand and relate to. Well, the plot begins with Ray being taken to Nemo's Pizza, a place I mentioned in passing in a previous episode, which would become a locale that we see a lot throughout the series. This is the first time we actually see it proper. He's taken there by Bernie. Bernie takes him to a table, and Ray's a little bit like, what? We're not sitting at our booth? No, we're going to go to a table today. You can tell right away that Bernie has something in mind. He's like, all right, he brought Ray here for a purpose. What's it going to be? Well, we have a new waitress. It is Angelina, played by Tina Arning. This is one of her more high-profile roles. She hasn't really done that much according to IMDb. A couple other episodes of other shows, some TV stuff. This is the only thing I really know her from. And she does a pretty decent job throughout her appearances as Angelina. I think she's used better in later episodes, but this is a decent way to introduce her. Since I saw her other appearances first, this is like, oh, that's how they introduced her. Oh. Well, you could tell right away when Bernie sees her that that's why he brought Ray here, just to show off Angelina. And the way that he's looking at Angelina, you can definitely tell this would only happen in a sitcom, because if someone was looking at a waitress like this in real life, even if it is a customer that's there constantly, the moment she takes the order to the back, Nemo should have been like, well, and if not that, he should come out and go, hey, Bernie, quit looking at my niece like that. Well, he doesn't. Sitcom logic. It does lead to a laugh, though, just the way he's looking at her. And that's not the only reason. Because apparently, and this is a running gag throughout the episode, when she gives Parmesan, she leans over and away to where her chest is almost sticking in the person's face. And the look on Ray's face when he realizes this is priceless. I mean, it's done in a PG manner where no cleavage or anything is exposed. It's just the presence and Ray's reaction that really sells the humor of this scene. And it is one of the gags that is pretty funny throughout the show, especially when a couple other characters get in on the act later on. Ray getting home is where this episode goes from being something that could have been, alright, pretty funny, but not one of my favorites, to being an episode where just the whole drama of it I roll my eyes at. I mean, there's moments later on in the show where I do roll my eyes at it, even though I find it funny. But the eye roll is more from the fact that they're not keeping continuity straight, other than it's like, really? This is the type of plot we're going with? And that's what we get here. It's one of those type of plots that if it happened in real life, it wouldn't have gotten this overblown unless it's because of the personalities involved. Here, it is a little bit of the personalities, but it's also just overblown just for the sake of comedy, which gets a little bit of a chuckle out of me, but it's also like, oh, this is stupid. And what happens is Ray forgets his wallet at Nemo's. Angelina's the one that calls. And when Ray hears that he gets a call from Angelina, he just goes straight to denying it, which, although keeping in with Ray's character, is just the lead-in to what happens. She finds out that it was at Nemo's. He tries to deny it, but then he goes with it. He's like, at Nemo's, where the waitresses are. And, of course, Debra, being how she is, she sees the bait, she takes it, and asks Ray if Angelina is a beautiful waitress. He beats around the bush a little bit, but admits, yeah, she is. But he's trying to answer the question delicately, which makes sense. If your wife asked you a question like this, you'd want to answer delicately instead of answer and then all of a sudden get a smack upside the back of the head. Debra starts asking, would he sleep with her? And this is where this part just gets me rolling my eyes a little bit like, really? We're going here? There's some humor here as well, but it's like, oh my god. The moment I watched it this time, the phrase, it's a trap, was ringing off in my head. Like, Ray, don't answer her, Ray, don't answer her, Ray. But of course, knowing how the episode progresses, I know that he was going to answer her. And he beats around the bush at first, which I got to applaud Ray as a character for doing that, because you don't want to give her ammunition to use. She says that if he didn't have Debra or the kids, he wouldn't be looking because he'd be a sailor, which is probably the bad analogy to use for this type of situation, considering that the whole stereotype about sailors going from port to port. And just listen to the song Traveling Man to get what I mean. Well, Debra does not put it away and actually continues trying to get a straight answer from Ray. And she finally does when she mentions, let's just say you're a sailor, and you go into a port of Queens and you see this pizza wench, which that did get a chuckle out of me. He does answer yes. And this is where you could see where Debra's trap was, because she loses it and goes upstairs, and then he's like, you didn't exist. Which, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but this is one of those things with relationship questions, it just has me scratching my head. It's like, if you ask a question to want an honest answer, why overblow like this? Me with Debra, they over the top her reaction for comedy, but it's like, you asked him a question to gauge how beautiful she was, and you asked a what if question. It's not, the way you're overreacting is like Ray said that he would sleep with her despite her being there, when he said that if he was not married and he happened to see her, he would at least talk to her to see if it leaned in that direction. But you asked a what if question. It's not like he's going to go out there and have an affair with the pizza wench, as you called her. Now, from a logic point of view, which I know weird considering sitcom logic, gotta balance it. I say her reaction is more from a combination of Ray trying to lie about Angelina and the whole leaving his wallet there and having gone there and seen the beautiful pizza waitress, combined with the answer. If it was just from the answer, it'd be like, really, you're overblowing it. Now Ray does go and get his wallet, which leads to one of the better moments of the show, and that is Peter Boyle coming in to order something, check out the new waitress, and get some Parmesan, which the look on Peter Boyle's face as he plays this when he asks for Parmesan is like, oh yeah, that's why Peter Boyle as Frank Barone was one of my favorite aspects of this show, and to see it there this early just has me clapping. And he is kind of a dirty old man, but he does not bring that aspect of his character out too often, which I applaud, because if he was just nothing but a dirty old man, it'd be like, yeah, it's not that funny, but in doses it works. And this is definitely one episode where it does work, and it's the introduction of that trait. Go hand in hand with Debra's reaction once he gets his wallet back. What does she plan on doing? She decides to go with the family to have dinner at Nemo's, and there's a bunch of little comedic moments here, which it's chuckle-worthy, but combined with Debra's question, it just has me shaking my head a little bit. It's like, really? Early in the show, and it's one of those things where I will admit it, I was half paying attention during this part when I watched it. I was like looking at it, chuckling a little bit, but a lot of it to memory just wasn't registering. And I think that's part of the reason normally when I watch this show, this is an episode I skip. You know, when you're a fan of a show and you watch through it again to marathon it, there's usually episodes you skip. And for season 1, this is one of a handful I usually do. There's going to be another one later in the season called Fascinating Debra that I usually skip. I think I've only watched it once as a whole. I'll have to watch it again for this thing. But who knows, it might be one I change my mind on. But this one, yeah, I usually skip it. And as you can probably tell from how I'm just not enthusiastic about it other than a few moments, it's warranted. Now, I will say, that gag that they started with Frank, it does lead to a pretty funny closing moment where Nemo's is closing for the night, scans over, you see Robert sitting at a table with Angelina doing Parmesan, and she's almost cut the entire thing. So you know she's been there for a while. His entire plate is covered with cheese. It cuts to the beginning of the credits, and you hear Robert clear his voice and go, When. That got a pretty good chuckle out of me because that joke has aged pretty well because that definitely goes with Robert being he's a single male in his early 40s at this time. He's definitely in the right position to want to hit an Angelina. Makes me wonder how the relationship between them would have gone. Probably not as well because other than her being a waitress and Nemo's niece, she doesn't really have too many character traits. She's a one-note character. Speaking of Nemo, this is the first of many appearances of Joseph Perry as Nemo. Pretty interesting and funny to a point background character. Here he had a funny moment when Ray and Debra first get there where he asks Ray if this one item smells. Tells him yeah, and then he's like, no charge, and gives it to the person. Another little aspect of Nemo's character is that he doesn't clean out the freezer and seems to be cheap to a point. And as we see later, there's a little gag that Ray will do every now and then. Health inspector that goes with this. He's like, that ain't funny, Raymond. Perry passed away in 2000, so the last couple appearances of the character were played by another actor. And I think that's part of the reason why they decided to transfer Nemo's Pizza over to Marco's and turn it into Marco's Pizza so they could keep the locale without having to constantly recast a character. Which I understand, but it's one of those things like, I kind of miss Nemo in the background of later seasons, but it is what it is. And of course, not until I watched the show in order did I realize, like, Marco's Pizza, what happened to Nemo's Pizza? It was one of those little continuity things that I was scratching my head at for a little bit. All in all, this is a there episode, has some funny moments. This might be an episode for someone else, but for me, and what I look for from an episode of this show, even this early on, it's just not that funny as a whole. Which, from a writing standpoint, is kind of a shame when you think about it, considering that it was written by Lou Schneider, which I am looking at my phone because I'm looking up the other episodes he wrote. He wrote, this is from the first season alone, The Car, Captain Nemo. So 2 episodes I really do like, but then Fascinating Debra kind of balanced out there in the first season. Second season, he wrote High School and The Garage Sale, along with Father Knows Least. Third season, he wrote Robert Moves Back, Be Nice, and The Sitter. Fourth season, Boob Job, which was the season premiere. The Christmas Picture, Hacky Doo, and Confronting the Attacker. Pretty good episodes. Season 5, The Wallpaper, Stefania Arrives, and Humback. Season 6, It's Supposed to Be Fun, The Skit, A Vote for Debra, and The Bigger Person. All funnier than this episode. 7, The Annoying Kid, which, for that season, that's an episode I usually skip, so a little consistent there. Another one of my favorite episodes is Grandpa Steals and Meeting the Parents. 8, The Surprise Party and Debra at the Lodge. Debra at the Lodge I usually skip. That's usually one I also skip. But then again, I haven't really watched a lot of the episodes from that season I didn't see. And 9, Angry Sex, The Fox Pass, and the finale. Finale is the only one I remember out of the season 9 episodes that he wrote. So you can see that a lot of his better episodes were in the middle. I guess with the writing standpoint, you could chalk it up to it being super early in the show's run and them not having the full dynamic, just like I was hypothesizing.